Hey guys, tonight we're slipping straight into something dark. A story that doesn't bother asking permission before it crawls under your skin. You're walking with me through the hush of a small town that's about to choke on secrets it never deserved. The air's heavy, doors are locked early, and the streets feel too empty, like the whole place called in sick. And don't worry, there are no flashy jump scares right now. Just that quiet little itch in your neck telling you you're not alone. You probably won't survive this, but hey, that's half the fun. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, comment where you're watching from and the exact time of night it is for you. I want to know which corners of the world you're braving this with me, and how deep into the night you already are. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first sound is your own footsteps, slower than usual, hesitant, like you're trying not to wake something. You keep telling yourself the street is quiet because everyone's home watching television or glued to their phones. But both of those lies splinter when you finally notice the soft electric glow is missing in every window. Dead screens, black panes, like the houses are blind. You tap your pocket. No signal bars, just that flat gray no service stare. A store sign flickers across the intersection. A small town convenience shop. One of those places where the linoleum floors older than most of the kids who buy slushies there. Except tonight, the fluorescent tubes buzz too loud. One already dead, and another flashing like a stuttering heartbeat. You don't want to look closer, but you do, because you're good at talking yourself into danger. Inside, the floor smells of bleach covering something metallic. And there he is, a man in a crisp windbreaker, logo embroidered like he's proud of an office, job nobody cares about. His hand grips a hunting knife too large for his frame, and his smile is almost polite. Almost. It twitches in ways smiles shouldn't. You lift a hand, try to reason with him, but every word tastes useless. Evening, buddy. How about we put that down? He answers you the same way nightmares answer you with mockery. We woke it up, he hisses. Then he giggles, the sound forcing your shoulders tighter. When he lunges, you already know the script won't change. Your hands move faster than thought. The thunder of the gunshot ruptures the quiet night, and then silence pounces back. He falls, mouth still shaped around that obscene grin, knife clattering first, body second. Your left blinking smoke away, heart thrashing like it wants out of your ribs. The blood should unsettle you, but what lodges in your mind like a splinter is his face, locked in joy, like death didn't close him. It froze him mid-celebration. He looks satisfied, the same way old photographs capture revelers right before catastrophe, and you have to keep reminding yourself, he was just a man from some company that bought the mine out by the hills, a man who stabbed your neighbor, who swung at you with purpose, good reasons, rational ones, but none of them hold much water against that face. The store reeks of cordite and iron. A girl whimpers quietly from behind the counter, pressing napkins to her bleeding arm. You want to reach her, but your body hesitates, stuck in that half-frozen autopilot you can't explain. The crack in reality is too small for anyone else to notice, but it yawns wide open inside you. Outside, a local man who should have gone home already replays the events in frantic charades. He swears he saw everything, except you know the details don't matter. What matters is the word the dead stranger screamed. Harbinger, a word out of place in a town too small for prophecy. Your ears still ring when law arrives late. Just the sheriff tonight, tired uniform and all. He steadies his voice, but avoids looking at the corpse too long. He pats your shoulder, says it was justified, righteous even, repeating phrases like he's trying to convince himself, not you. He takes your weapon. You stand lighter, but not safer. And here's something that makes your scalp prickle. The radios don't work. The phones don't either. The girl's injury worsens because no ambulance answers. Everyone stands in that fluorescent jitter, trying hard to pretend this is just another crime scene and not the birth of something different. A stray fragment of history intrudes here, like the world itself can't resist linking your story to the past. Did you know, back in 1942, the U.S. military actually experimented with sealing off towns to test civilian reactions under blackout conditions? Almost nobody remembers because the reports were shredded. But some archivists whispered that entire populations were kept without communication for weeks. Historians still debate whether those towns ever truly reopened, or if their residents were quietly relocated and silenced. That sudden thought gnaws at you, because isn't this what it feels like? A blackout dressed as an accident, an isolation cloaked as bad luck. The man in the windbreaker wanted to warn you, or maybe he wanted to gloat, before forcing himself into that ugly split second grin. And now, with the channels dead, you wonder if you're standing in one of those forgotten experiments, replayed under new management. The girl whimpers again, clutching her arm. The sheriff mutters about stitches, about driving her out himself. Your coworker wipes his forehead. His face looks strange when the buzz light flickers, normal one moment, unreadable the next. You remind yourself he was fine seconds ago, but seconds ago the smiling man was alive too, wasn't he? It takes effort to swallow. Your tongue tastes of dust and copper. The lights overhead jitter harder, buzzing like flies trapped in a jar. In that moment, you could swear the corpse shifts, just breathing deep, maybe smirking wider. Your knees almost give before reason catches, telling you bodies twitch sometimes, nerves firing late. Easy explanation, neat little bow. You buy it mostly, because the alternative means worse things have already started. But you know. And deep in the silence between electrical buzzing, you swear you can hear whispers slip beneath it, too faint, too fleeting, like the very darkness is practicing speech you're not ready to hear. The second you pulled the trigger back in that convenience store, you told yourself it would be the punctuation mark, the end of the conflict. One neat breath, exhale, holster weapon, paperwork later, but endings don't cooperate in this town. Not anymore. You step forward into the smear of blood seeping whiter across the linoleum, and the thought you shouldn't have is the only one that sticks. It looks rehearsed, like a stagehand spilled the bucket of red in exactly the right place for maximum effect. You crouch without realizing it, nose wrinkling as the sharp copper edge hooks into your throat. The girl weeping behind the counter presses wads of napkins tighter, and her sobs should ground you in reality, but they only deepen the theater play feeling. Like she's playing her part, the hurt witness crying her lines out on cue. You half expect applause, curtains, credits. Instead, all you get is more buzzing lights and the clutter of your own breathing. Your eyes flicker back to the man on the floor. He should be shrinking into nothing, ordinary, disposable. That's what happens to real emergencies. They dissolve. But his mouth holds the same smug bend it did when he lunged at you. Just a little dried saliva at the corners now. Teeth flashing too white against graying lips. The expression never softened, didn't vanish with life. If anything, it deepened, a smile meant to endure. You whisper to yourself, it's just a body. But the phrase comes back thin, rejected by the rank air. That's when you feel the pressure of being observed. Not by the other sheriff's deputy, not by the girl, not even by the corpse. Something deeper, something that already knows the next act. The sheriff's voice eventually slaps the silence. It booms too loud, and you flinch. He calls it clean and justified, but the words hang sterile, brittle. You notice he doesn't step in the blood. He stays clear of the red edge, as if crossing into it means joining an agreement he's not willing to make. His hands shake slightly, so he buries them in his pockets. He tells you protocol, but his eyes say something's wrong. You think about crime scenes you've seen before, fistfights at cheap bars, break-ins where someone forgot to cover their tracks. That one hunting accident that left a boot half stuck in a creek bed. None of them resembled this. Not one ever felt tailored, orchestrated. And yet this looks planned down to the shadows. You kneel again and trace the edge of the blood with your eyes. There are no drips dragging out, no scattered footsteps smearing like panic. The puddle blooms smooth, perfectly wicked. Too clean, he collapsed exactly where the spotlight of a ceiling lamp hit brightest. And your brain, starving for logic, dredges a memory from high school history class. The Salem witch trials, 1,000 whispers, false testimony, neighbors turning on neighbors under the sickly glow of flickering candlelight. The records describe blood testimony, girls faking spasms in front of judges, whole communities acting, staging their madness as spectacle. Historians still debate whether the girls thought they were lying, or whether they felt genuinely overtaken by unseen forces. You shiver because you can't decide which is worse, deception or possession. The thought feels too close. You rise quickly, turn away, but the lighting out of the corner of your eye steals certainty. Every liquid ripple reflects not fluorescent bulbs, but something fainter and yellower, like lanterns far away. You blink, it's gone. Parasites of imagination, you hope. Your radio spits static when you try it. The deputy tries his too. Dead air. Technology should anchor you. Tonight it only becomes rope slipping through your hands, useless. You try not to think about blackout towns. Whole communities erased from maps. Communications silenced, so experiments can thrive without leaks. But try not thinking something. See how long that lasts. The girl moans again. She's young. You could remember her name if you thought harder. She might live if she gets stitches, if someone drives her to the hospital quicker than a breath. But every second feels dragged out, like the play director isn't ready for the curtain to fall. You realize you've become background scenery in the theater of the town's unraveling. That's why the body grins. He's not dead. He's waiting for the next line. And you haven't even noticed until now. Your finger never slid back through your trigger guard after the shot. But it trembles against your empty holster now, forgotten, like your body's still stuck in the moment of threat, still playing its role. The sheriff seems ready to wrap things up quickly, almost too quickly, as if rushing off stage before props malfunction. He says, "Go home. Rest. State police can take the mess tomorrow." But every word stumbles under the buzzing light. There is no home, because the home you remember doesn't exist anymore. It has already become part of the storyboard, scripted and waiting. When you finally stumble outside, the night air is no relief. It bakes, presses. The parking lot barely holds your footsteps. You glance down for sanity, and there it is, the faintest trace of another stain. Not from the man, not from anyone inside. On the asphalt, next to your own cruiser tire, a dark smear reaching in the wrong direction, as if someone else dragged something away just before you arrived. You swallow. The memory of the gunshot still pulses in your ears, and the buzzing overhead light from the store follows you too, except it should have stopped when you walked far enough. But listen, there's another buzzing. Higher, unnatural. A whine you'll soon learn belongs to sky machines giving orders they have no right to give. It's coming. And you're already drenched in the first bloodstain. You keep replaying the stranger's expression, how polite it looked even with blood on his hands, like he'd just stepped out of a meeting and decided to stop by hell on his way home. His jacket wasn't torn or dirty, no ash or dust like you'd expect if he came from the mines. The embroidered logo sat there bold as brass, 40 and global. You don't know what they export, don't know what business they run other than moving into the old mine. But here's the thing, ordinary corporations don't usually send smiling salesmen wielding knives into corner stores. When you really think about it, the strangest part wasn't the violence. Small towns see desperation. People snap. It happens. The strangest part was how natural he made it look. The way he tapped the blade against his leg, as though pacing through a presentation slide. His words weren't those of an attacker. They were pitches. "It's awake," he yelled, as though you weren't the victim, but an investor waiting to be impressed. And some part of you wants to laugh, because if you squint, he resembles half the men you see get coffee every morning. Mock neat hair, shoes just uncomfortable enough to scream corporate. But then there's that overlay, the twitchy undercurrent of glee that makes his smile feel like it's stretching too wide, like his face can't hold the secret struggling behind his teeth. You only realize later that smile works like a disease. Little by little, you catch echoes of it in everyone else, in the deputy's nervous lip twitch, in the sheriff's too tight vowels. That word again slides back into your mind. Harbinger. It doesn't belong here. No preacher at Sunday service, not even your rambling grandfather with his mind stories, ever used that word in real conversation. Harbinger is the language of fables, of cults, yet here it rolled off his tongue as naturally as someone ordering a latte. And you can't shake it. The girl sobbing behind the counter fills in what silence remains, and you think about how grief sometimes imitates hysteria, how in Victorian England, entire families treated mourning like performance art, draping mirrors, wearing black veils, fainting in parlors. Historians still debate whether those gestures were sincere, or if they'd become ritual spectacle, a script people felt obligated to follow. The thought burns in your chest, because wasn't that exactly this? A stranger dying on cue, a girl crying on cue, you pulling your trigger at the climax. And behind it all, a polite salesman's grin. Corporate logos carry weight, don't they? You see a swoosh, a bitten apple, 3 golden arches, and your brain accepts comfort, familiarity. That blue Fortean global crest works the same way, and yet spotting it on his jacket feels like he's genetically branded, tagged by something with leverage far beyond your county line. You don't trust the image, because trust is exactly what logos want. Here's a tidbit scratching at the inside of your skull as you stare at him. The medieval flagellants used symbols, 2 crosses stitched to their tunics, as they marched through towns, whipping blood from their backs. Did you know one chronicler described their faces as beaming with joy and malice together? The exact phrase echoes in your mind while you stand over this modern man with his modern jacket. Different uniform, same sickness. You step back, but every motion tightens the invisible net. Deputy Alvarez drags the body aside. His hand lingers too long on the jacket, fingers brushing the logo like recognition. You can't tell if it's curiosity or reverence. He coughs when you notice and quickly looks away. You clear your throat, desperate for normal words. Who was he? The deputy shrugs. Nobody, but nobody doesn't smile like that. Nobody doesn't shout prophecy before lunging, and nobody doesn't bleed in neat pools designed to anchor memory. Your body won't calm. Your heartbeat has no interest in logic. It kicks like an animal, frantic, not because the man attacked you, not because your weapon recoils still live in your wrist, but because you know he expected it, the way he stepped into the shot, the shriek crescendoing toward it, the smile already locked in place. He wanted you to be the last page of his script, which leaves the sickening possibility that somewhere else, someone is already rehearsing Act Two, and while you're chewing on that dread, the store lights stutter. Not a full blackout, just a shift, like a projector reel catching. For a split second, everything turns sepia. The blood, the shelves, the woman's face. Then back to fluorescent. Nobody else reacts. You realize too late that smile's still wide, still carved across the floor like an after-image. You whisper, almost by accident, "What did we wake up?" But the only answer is buzzing, static, and that contagious curl tugging at the corner of your own lips. You bite down hard enough to taste blood, because on some subterranean frequency, you're afraid you might start smiling back. The sheriff signs it off like it's over. Justified, clean, a righteous shoot, he calls it. Though even saying the phrase makes him shift his weight, uneasily, on the linoleum tiles that still smell of bleach and copper. Maybe he believes it. Maybe he just wants you to believe it. But in that still, buzzing glow, you know full well nothing is over. The man may have fallen, lungs empty, heart silenced, yet part of him refuses to leave the stage. Because that grin, that terrible misaligned grin, refuses to relax. It clings to his features, the way barnacles cling to a drowned hull, grotesque and permanent. You hand over your weapon, your wrists loose like you're surrendering more than metal and powder. The sheriff doesn't see it, or maybe he sees it and refuses to. But you stand close enough to taste the lie. The dead man is still present. Not alive, not exactly, but present. You kneel against protocol, against sanity, against survival instincts. For a moment, it feels like the corpse itself is drawing you closer, conducting gravity like a maestro conducting strings. Its teeth flash again, catching the flicker from a dying fluorescent bulb, and you swear that grin widens, muscles can stiffen, you remind yourself. Nerves can twitch, but no pathology textbook explains this sort of endurance. The smile isn't rigor mortis. It's intent. You retreat, heels squeaking. But you can't shake the sense that his eyes fight not to glaze, that behind them is a pleasure in holding form. The sheriff coughs behind you. He wants to get your statement quickly, wants to pack up and label this a tragedy. But your ears are ringing still from the blast, and above that ringing, you catch something else. It isn't speech, not human anyway, but an echo, a thin strand of thought curling in the silence. Harbinger, harbinger, harbinger. Over and over. Maybe it's your brain chewing its own nerves. Maybe it's him. And here's one of those cold facts that make history trick you. In 1803, a French doctor attempted to prove the head retained consciousness after decapitation. He craned over the guillotine basket, asking the blinking eyes questions. Witnesses swore the head followed commands for nearly 30 seconds. Historians still debate whether that was real consciousness or muscle memory. But standing over this broad-shouldered corpse, that question feels less like debate and more like prophecy. What if death isn't a curtain, but an invitation? That smile tells you he's not gone. You think of folklore too, the old stories whispered when the night fire dwindles. In parts of Eastern Europe, villagers believed that if a corpse smiled after death, it meant the dead had bargained with the void. If buried, they would claw back out. So families cut tendons in jaws, strung mouths shut with horsehair, anything to prevent that return. Looking down at this man, no horsehair in sight, you swallow hard, because the folklore feels less distant, more instruction manual. Deputy Alvarez mutters something about the storm messing with signals, about maybe the mountains killing coverage. You nod. You both know coverage doesn't collapse this suddenly without design, but instead of technology, your focus sticks to the dead grin, illuminated a meter away. Your gut twists as the sheriff takes notes beside the corpse. He avoids the face, scribbles on a pad, eyes darting like a school kid, refusing to meet the gaze of something above his comprehension. And then movement. Not much, not cinematic, not undead resurrection. Just the quiver of fingertips, twitch of a forearm brushing tile. You blink, biting tongue, telling yourself corpse nerves can misfire. That's normal. You whisper it. Normal, normal. But even as you say it, the man's hand curls just enough that his knuckles squeak against the sticky, blood-glazed floor. No one else comments. Either they don't see it, or don't want to see it. You alone keep the horror pinned between your ribs. You shuffle back further, heat rising in your throat. The body doesn't move again. Still, you can't erase the impression that if you glance away long enough, it might refit itself into another position entirely. It's as if the store, this town, maybe the very map you know, is conspiring to let the dead man act off camera. And your mind, already weakened by heat and fear, wanders. If he really wanted to, how would he rise? Slowly as shadow, or suddenly, snapping upright with that grin snapping wider. Questions like these are reckless, you know, because the darkness is listening, taking notes, thinking about how best to choreograph it. By the time you stumble outside, half dizzy, you know you've crossed some unseen line. It isn't the shooting that matters anymore, nor the sheriff's words, nor even the pool of blood drying inside. It's the grin, that impossible grin anchored to a dead man, smirking at reason itself. Most corpses lie still. This one lingers. This one waits. You keep checking your phone like a nervous tick, even though the screen hasn't changed since the moment it froze. Gray bars, no service, battery bleeding down towards single digits. You click it off, back on, just to see if the universe feels like being merciful. It doesn't. Deputy Alvarez holds up his, shakes his head. Nothing. The sheriff tries the landline dead tone, as hollow and quiet as a grave. That's when the silence changes form. It isn't just an absence of chatter anymore, not just broken signal towers or storm damage. It feels deliberate, curated. Each second of quiet stretches into something orchestrated, like someone dragging a bow across the string of your nerves. You notice how thick it feels, heavy, a silence that pushes back when you push into it. You try to joke, mutter something about small towns and outdated towers. The sheriff stamps down on the joke before it takes breath. Not the towers, he says flat. His eyes dart to the ceiling, as though someone might be eavesdropping through the buzzing lights themselves. The girl cradling her stitched-up hand whimpers again. But even her sobs feel strangely dampened, like the silence swallows them before they travel far. You remember something out of place from a college lecture you barely attended during WWII. Entire towns near chemical plants were sealed for testing safety protocols. Radios went dead. Phones were cut. No one entered. No one left. The official line was national security. Families wrote letters that vanished into postal limbo. Historians still debate whether it was about protection or experiment. Either way, some communities simply dropped off the map for weeks at a time, only reopened when the government quietly felt like flipping the switch. Now the thought lands in your mind like an anvil. Maybe Riverbend is next. Maybe it already has been flagged. For a moment, you almost laugh at the absurdity, but the skin between your shoulders knows better. Because absurdity is exactly what fear uses to loosen your hold on reality. And then, as if the silence wants to prove it's bigger than you, the police radio on your belt clicks. Not a broadcast, just that click, like someone thumbed the mic, then let go. Static fizzles for a half heartbeat, then emptiness again. You freeze, ears desperate. Alvarez stares at you. Did you just? No, you whisper back. The sheriff fiddles with his unit. Nothing, just silence again. Long, oppressive. You've always told yourself that silence is space, that it's safe, a buffer against conflict, but standing in it now, it feels like something living, something breathing down your collar and enjoying the quiet too much. Folklore scratches its way back into your brain. In Icelandic sagas, silence was often treated as a sign of hidden presence. Farmers talked about how sheep would go mute a split second before spirits walked fields. Silence wasn't peaceful, it was warning. Beware what claims the air before you. The room around you feels exactly like that now. Clamped mouths, hushed windows, all holding space for something waiting to arrive. The girl presses bandages tighter. The sheriff insists on protocol, says Alvarez should drive her across the river for stitches. 15 minutes, he says, but the deputy shakes his head. Bridges are closed. He whispers it like the words themselves might be contraband. Closed, both of them. No exits. You start to argue, but when you open your mouth, the whine of your dying phone fills the air as if mocking you. 11% left, dwindling fast. You should turn it off, conserve battery. But another part of you refuses to let go. As long as the device glows, you can still pretend you're tethered to a wider world. You ever hear of Operation Teapot? Alvarez blurts suddenly, maybe trying to shake off the dread. His army days start dripping back in. They tested atomic blast effects out in the desert, total silence across a whole county. Radio's dead, phones dead. Soldiers said they could taste the silence, like dust in your teeth. He swipes sweat from his forehead. Feels the same right now. You didn't want confirmation. You wanted denial. But the word taste hooks you hard, because don't you feel it too, like salt metal under your tongue, fogging every breath. The sheriff exhales slowly, as if trying not to exhale panic itself. He says, "All right, someone's cutting us off," but in the silence, his voice doesn't sound like authority. It sounds like confession. You clutch your useless phone tighter, and in the buzzing stillness above, a new paranoia seeps down. What if the silence isn't a barrier at all? What if it's a hand cupping your town, holding you steady, so you don't fall off the table during the experiment? One bar of static crackles finally, just for a fraction of a second, across the sheriff's radio. In it, you swear you hear something whispered, not English, not even language, just cadence. A lullaby hummed wrong. Alvarez meets your eye, his face pale in the flicker. He says what you were already thinking. Somebody's listening. They don't want us speaking to anyone else. And suddenly, the silence doesn't just feel like absence. It feels like surveillance. You've been clinging to the one anchor still left in this blackout storm. Your partner, Alvarez. He's sweating but steady, bandaging the girl with makeshift gauze and duct tape. He curses under his breath when the roll sticks, laughs nervously when it tears. Those little gestures, so ordinary, keep you vertical. You keep thinking, if Alvarez is solid, then maybe so am I. But the silence keeps rearranging things. His face, normal one blink, altered the next. You tell yourself it's the flicker of the fluorescence, but the lights aren't flickering anymore, not really. That unease is entirely his face, soft trembling at the corner of his mouth, eyes curling in a familiar, recent way. You've seen that look already, too many times for one night. He shifts, rubs the back of his neck, and mutters about signal jamming, about his army days. And then, like a drop of ink into clear water, his words ripple wrong. They don't want us to call. It's awake, he whispers. You freeze. Your blood stills before your breath has the guts to follow. Because those words, those exact words, belonged to the stranger in the windbreaker. Alvarez, you say gently, like coaxing someone back from a cliff. You're tired, man. Smoke, adrenaline. He looks past you, pupils wide. The smile begins to arrive. Not sudden, not lunging. Just curling, tightening little by little, as though the muscles of his face have signed a contract, and you know what comes next, because you've been watching it spread like a disease tonight. The transition from fear into glee, from comrade into monster. Lindsay shifts on the floor, pale and bleeding, her hands pressed tight. But it's Alvarez, not her, who suddenly stands like a marionette tugged upward. He's staring not at you, but at the corpse you left cooling. He told us, Alvarez says flatly. We have to carry it on. I am the harbinger. The way he says it is worse than a threat, worse than a growl. He says it like he's filling out a form, like it's already written, and he's just acknowledging it. You open your mouth to argue, but dread curls deeper, slower, far more suffocating. The man you've stood next to on shifts, who you've shared coffee and donut jokes with, whose handwriting you could recognize on a citation at 20 feet, now carries eyes that shine with the same deranged glee as strangers. This is no outbreak of madness. This is choreography. In the back of your mind, history again drops its rotten fruit. You remember reading about the dancing plague of 1518 in Strasbourg. Entire crowds convulsed together, bodies jerking in synchronicity, hundreds of people infected by movement. Historians still debate whether it was collective hysteria, ergot poisoned bread, or a curse laid on the town. But what gnaws you now is the sight. Friends turning alien, neighbors collapsing into puppets of something unseen. Alvarez moves just like that, not random, but scripted by a rhythm you can't hear. It takes everything in you not to lunge at him, not to plead. Instead, you back toward the cooler doors. The hum of refrigeration is strangely loud, like an extra heartbeat trying to drown out his words. But of course, he doesn't stop talking. We called it up. And the bridges, didn't you notice? We're caught here, meant to be. His voice carries calm delight, quiet like a man telling a bedtime story. You don't get it. That's your problem. You think you're saving people. But we were the announcement. I am the harbinger. The sheriff is staring, confused, words caught behind shock. He tries to dismiss it. You're in shock. Tony, sit down. But the authority collapses in his throat. Nobody believes him, not even himself. Alvarez shifts his stance. He's bleeding from his ribs where shards of glass cut him earlier. But he doesn't notice, doesn't wince, and you see his fingers curl into that awkward grip on his sidearm. Not like a cop, not like training taught. More like someone about to offer it to the void. The silence thickens, swallowing reason. You're pressed under a truth too nauseating to hold. The smile doesn't just twist on strangers. It spreads. It recruits. And for the first time, the idea slips in cold and uninvited. Maybe you're not immune. You shake it off. Force yourself to speak sharp. Tony, look at me. That's not your voice. For a fleeting heartbeat, his expression shifts back, weary, desperate. Relief spikes through you, but in the very next flicker of light, his grin etches back across his skin, and the words spill out with ease. It's awake. The world spins thin around you, and even your sheriff looks rattled, fraying. The girl whimpers again, somewhere outside. A drone buzzes overhead. Inside, Alvarez smiles, and his eyes promise the nightmare has already written the next line. and you are running out of actors who remember the original script. The badge on Sheriff Jenkins' chest always used to look like armor to you. Polished, steady, a kind of guarantee that even if the world tilted, you'd have a grown-up in the room tonight under the buzzing lights of the Kewickie Mart. It looks more like foil reflecting the wrong kind of fire. He's barking orders, scribbling down half-legible notes, trying to hold reality together with tape and posture, but you can feel it unraveling already. It starts small. His sentences falter, a word skipped here, a phrase repeated there, like a record needle stuck on a groove. He wants his authority to sound like steel, but it clangs hollow, and when he steps too close to Alvarez, the smile still blooming like a sick flower on your friend's face, you already know how it will end. "Tony, you need to sit down," the sheriff says, steady but careful. "You're hurt. Let's..." But Alvarez interrupts with words you've already heard too many times. That phrase chiseled in nightmare scripture. "I am the harbinger." And the way he says it now, it isn't crazed. It's professional, sober. It carries the chill of inevitability. The sheriff tries once more, stretching his authority wide, voice cracking at its edges. "Deputy, that's an order." He takes a single step forward. One step, but sometimes a single step is the last straw. Lindsay, forgotten until now in her wounded silence, moves faster than anyone notices, stooping to grasp the knife she never should have been left near. Blood still streaks her pale arm as she drives it into Alvarez's side. For a frail frame, her force comes from somewhere deeper. Alvarez gasps, staggers, but he doesn't collapse right away. Instead, he pivots, grinning wide, and uses the momentum to push against Jenkins. The sheriff stumbles backward, his hand reaching for his sidearm, but the girl's wild slash arcs higher, and the blade rips his uniform open. The red that spills down is far too fast, too much, too unstoppable. For a frozen second, Sheriff Jenkins just stares, lips parted like he never believed his story would end this way. Then gravity takes him. The sound of his body hitting the floor is heavier than gunfire. You expect command, expected order, expected some gruff curse. What comes is a wet gasp. He's trying to speak through the blood, filling his lungs, trying to warn, trying to apologize, trying to cling to the act of protecting you. But his badge stares up blankly from the floor, reflecting only fluorescent wine. Authority is gone, just like that. For the first time all night, you let yourself feel naked, untethered. The one person meant to stand between chaos and the void has crumpled into foam tiles, bleeding into the seams. And the worst part isn't the blood. It's the look on his face before he toppled. Shock, not from pain, but from betrayal. He never believed it could come from inside, from the people he swore to protect. You recall a passage you once read about Julius Caesar, how the historians argued for centuries about that one moment in 44 BCE. The debate never ends. Did Caesar really whisper, et tu, brute, when he saw betrayal in a friend's eyes? Or was it fabricated later, woven into drama so future generations could shudder? But does it matter? The enduring image is the thing. Authority slain not by strangers, but by allies. You watch Jenkins grasp at his side, eyes wide as betrayal hacks through him, and you understand how stories linger like scars, and then folklore nudges you from another angle. In some Appalachian tales, lawmen who died with their badge warm were said to rise restless, spirits pacing crossroads on nights when storms silenced communication. Badges turned to beacons for whatever stirred between the trees. You think about Jenkins' badge lying now in a half circle of blood, catching the overhead glare like an eye that will stay open long after his body closes. You nearly gag, your ears ring. The gunfire that should have followed never came because the sheriff loosened his grip too soon. Even as his pistol flopped out, smoking faintly from its chamber, you can't shake the fact that his last act wasn't defense, but timing, saving you from being cut down even quicker. He exhales, and with it, the illusion of protection exhaled too. You're left clutching your own sanity like a thin umbrella in a downpour, and Alvarez, stabbed and still smiling, is the one that remains standing. His grin drips blood where the knife stuck, but he's steady. He looks down at the sheriff's body, then at you, then up toward nothing visible, like he's checking in with something larger. See, it begins again. The repetition sends a tremor through the store. Not a quake, just your perception tilting, hearing a creak in the shelves, a buzz in the lights, as though the physical world reacts to prophecy spoken aloud. You understand it now. Authority doesn't collapse with riots or speeches. It dies quietly, bleeding out on dirty linoleum tiles under humming lights, leaving you with nothing but your own pulse and the nightmare grins of people you once trusted. You step back. Words catch in your throat. You keep hearing his rasp even after he's gone. Sheriff Jenkins' authority lived and died in one small town. Now it's gone, and with it the last thread of normalcy snaps. No shield left, no law, only you and the smile that has already spread further than you can see. The night is already raw, the edges of your sanity fraying in fluorescent wine and blood stink. Then the hum comes lower, mechanical, too clean to be insect wings, and too heavy to be any aircraft you'd expect over Riverbend. A vibration rolls through the air just before the sound cracks open. Attention. This area is under quarantine and has been PLACED-ON level 4 lockdown. The voice is steady, chemical, a voice with no throat, no accent, filtered into perfection. It doesn't echo like a human would. The words arrive cut clean, as if printed directly inside your skull for a sliver of confusion. You wonder if the voice even traveled through the air at all. You stumble into the parking lot and look up. A rectangular drone. Its red lights hanging above the intersection, like it's crucified in the night sky. Square body, PA rigged underneath. All steel utility, no softness, no mercy. The message loops as it floats down the block, broadcasting warnings of curfew, of deadly force, of shelter in place, as though everyone hasn't already barricaded behind dark windows. The sheriff's body lies cooling behind you, authority stripped from veins with arterial spurts. Yet here comes a machine enforcing order without hesitation, without breathing, and though its words are bureaucratic, stripped clean of rage, they chill you more deeply than the deranged smiles ever did. Because the lunatics whispered and slashed and lunged, you could see their madness, smell it. This is bureaucracy in weapon form. Automation obeying sealed orders you'll never see. And that makes it worse. You shout up, voice cracking. By who? Who authorized this? The machine doesn't answer, doesn't even hesitate. It repeats the message, then glides away. Its spotlight swinging indifferent across houses. A sudden dreadful thought roots. Maybe it did answer and just repeated itself, because bureaucracies only know one script. Alvarez, still standing bloody and grinning, laughs faintly under his breath. Lindsay echoes. Their smiles catch the drone's spotlight for an instant, grins shining like sigils. You retreat further, and here's a historical itch you can't not scratch. In 1943, a Maine fishing hamlet was quietly evacuated after radar experiments caused island-wide blackouts. Records filed under communication studies. Residents who tried to return found their homes sealed, their town hall gutted. Historians still debate if it was cover for Navy jammers or something stranger. But the parallels roast you alive as the drone loops its mantra, turning Riverbend's streets into corridors of silent inevitability. Your mouth dries as you recall another flicker of folklore. Appalachian stories of sky whistlers, metallic lights that sang orders to farmers in monotonous voices, demanding obedience or fire from above. Old men swore those weren't gods, weren't demons, just tools hauling someone else's well down into the mountain valleys. And now, standing beneath steel angels with loudspeakers for mouths, you don't have to doubt anymore, because the drone jerks suddenly mid-hover, spotlight locking directly onto you. For a pulsing second, your whole body is the target. And when it reminds you again, asterisk, deadly force has been authorized. Asterisk, it clips the syllables in a way no human mouth could. Your knees almost buckle. Authority is no longer lost. It's been replaced. Not given to another sheriff, not inherited by neighboring towns, but hijacked by machines vomiting orders written far away, far above. And you, still panting, still streaked in sweat and blood, realize that Riverbend has become a fenced-off stage, its actors reduced to screaming or smiling, while the sky provides direction. The hum thickens. 2 more drones appear at the block's far edge, their turrets glinting silver in moon glare. They move in tandem, patient as hunters, their speakers calling in sync like priests chanting rote sermons. All RESID and TS must remain indoors. Deadly force has been authorized. There's no pause for dissent, no option for dialogue, just decree. And you, caught under their buzzing, throatless choir, understand exactly what kind of nightmare you've inherited. Not panic, not even possession. System, the machines above drone on, and your pulse, small and human, has no counterargument. The bridge has always been your lifeline, a stretch of concrete over black water. Nothing poetic about it. Functional, reliable. On good days, it took you 15 minutes to Shago, groceries, the ER. It meant escape. Tonight, it's a loaded barrel pressed against your forehead. The cruiser rattles as you roll onto the first planks of the span. The river yawns beneath, blacker than anything you've seen before. It almost gleams with an oily surface that catches pale hints of spotlight. Then the light itself hits you, a full beam, high lumen blast directly into your skull. You recoil, shielding your eyes, stumbling halfway out of the car. "I'm law enforcement," you scream. It's the only badge of protection you still imagine might carry weight. You hold it up like a shield, as though symbols still mean anything. The answer comes sharp, mechanical, familiar. You are in violation of curfew. Deadly force has been authorized. It repeats like it never heard your plea. Or worse, it heard you and simply disregarded it. You demand again. By whose order? This time your voice trembles, cracking like thin ice under boots. What returns isn't rhetoric, isn't negotiation. 20 seconds, then commotion on the far side of the bridge. Not amplified, just raw human bark. Weapons free, your blood ices. Orange light bursts once, then a rip like cloth tearing. Except the cloth is reality itself. A spray of gunfire arcs into the night, carving the river into glittering chaos. Your mouth opens to yell, but the spotlight shifts, tilting off you, stabbing downwards instead. That's when you see it, a kayak yellow, spray painted clumsily with flames. You know it even in silhouette. TJ Combs. Always grinning, always stubborn, always swearing he'd find a way around any rule. He was trying to paddle out, to cheat the curfew. The drone sees him. You watch the geometry of his death like a rehearsal. Bullets riddle plastic, tearing it open like tissue. The kayak tips, falters. His body slides, trapped in the ruined vessel, then bobbing free as his life jacket pops above. For one split second, you think maybe he's alive. Then the drone fires again, chewing his corpse until the water accepts it. Silence rushes back like vacuum. Your voice breaks loose in animal noise, a scream not entirely yours. Because the machine doesn't pause to aim emotion, only its weapon. The spotlight whips back toward you. The first burst scythes across your cruiser, windshield pulverizing. Glass sprays your skin like glittering ash. Instinct slams you sideways. Your shoulder clips doorframe. Your ankle screams. But you're alive, barely, as the second burst cleaves air, just where your chest had been a half beat before. You hurl yourself off balance, body moving faster than thought. fleeing sideways into the dark shoulder of town. Every round chews into pavement, spitting chunks of concrete like rabid teeth. Then, suddenly, pause, a whine like gears stalling. You can't tell if it's jammed, empty, or just merciful. You don't wait. You sprint, not toward safety, because there isn't any, just away, alley after alley, ducking between stacked trash bins, holding breath beneath eaves. The drone doesn't relent. It prowls overhead, heat vision surely strangling every inch of your outline. And yet, somehow, you live. Maybe because it's testing you, maybe because it wants you running. Your lungs tear at themselves. Every house you flick past is sealed, curtains tight, the glow of muted TVs visible out of instinct, but never answered. Everyone's choosing silence, not out of ignorance, but obedience. For a split second, you flash to history, how entire villages disappeared during the American polio quarantines of the early 1900s. Signs nailed to doors, keep out. Whole blocks sealed in silence. Telephone poles cut to stop news escaping. Historians still argue if the disease necessitated it fully, or if control was just too appealing a game not to replay. Tonight, in Riverbend, you have your answer. Control is reason enough to murder. The drone strafes the river once more, a reminder that even the water is cage, not escape, and you stumble through backyards, every footstep a betrayal, until the night air slams heavy in your own lungs. Glass cuts your palms, blood dots your sleeve, but you're alive, and you can feel now you aren't just being chased, you are being herded. Euclid Lane never looked like much. A handful of mailboxes leaning against one another, familiar yards strewn with toys and garden clutter, porches where you'd waved hot summer evenings at people you'd known since kindergarten, the kind of place you'd call harmless. But tonight the street is a gauntlet. Jerry, your bathrobe-clad neighbor, already tried to cave in your head with an aluminum bat. You'd told yourself it was a fluke, one man breaking under pressure, a crack in the wall, not the whole wall falling. But when you leap over his groaning body, bat knocked from his hand, you run headlong into the truth. It isn't just Jerry. They're waiting, half the street, maybe more, woven together in shadows and porch light halos. People you know by name, by handshake, by block party dish, Amy Freeman, twirling a garden weasel like she's conducting an orchestra of flies. Drew Austin, butcher knives cross-sheathed at his hips, his breath sharp enough you hear it from across the yard. Tom McReady, with his ridiculous duck gun barrel, racking it slow as though savoring the sound. Every one of them is smiling, that same stretched leather grin. Not wild, not hysterical calm, rehearsing. They're expecting you. And you know before they say it what line comes next. I am the harbinger. Voices overlap, clumsy at first, then thickening into chant. A drunken choir of neighbors, marching their lips the same way they'd once marched petitions for pothole repair. Hearing it in their voices seizes your gut worse than gunfire. because this isn't foreign, isn't outside. These are the people who cut your hair, sold you groceries, swapped Christmas cookies, and their faces belong to the same playbill as the suited knife man from the Kewickie Mart. What terrifies you is not that they turned. It's how fast. You recall your grandfather's stories. The mine whispers, and it clicks like tumblers in a lock. This isn't madness rippling, that takes time. This is contagion like flipped switches. Whole crowds rewriting themselves mid-sentence. The history itch bites again, cruel. Salem, 1692. Accusations spiraled into mass conversions. Neighbors chanting rehearsed testimony to hang each other. Historians still debate whether the girls believed their accusations or simply practiced lies. Folklore fills in its own gap, whispering that what people recite often enough eventually becomes true. And here, in Riverbend, people you thought incorruptible are repeating the words till truth wears their faces. They surge, not at a dead sprint, but a dreadful slow push, improvised weapons raised like sacred relics. Each step deliberate, dragging gravel, each word a percussion beat. I am the harbinger. I am the harbinger. The chant doesn't sound like neighbors. It sounds like a sermon. You break instinct and run, not because you think you'll outrun them, but because you won't survive standing. Your boots tangle in scrub grass, every blade hooking your ankles like hands from below. The fire on the ridges paints their smiles orange when you glance back, and the sight almost cripples you. The familiar become flames. The flames become their faces. Your chest sears, not just from running, from betrayal, from dread. And the folklore loop won't stop whispering. A mob isn't just people. It's an organism. One body with many hands, one chant, one smile. The thing on Euclid Lane isn't Jerry or Amy or Tom. It is Riverbend itself, refitted. Its skin borrowed from people you used to nod to on Tuesdays. And it wants you. Not to kill, not exactly, to fold you in, to break you down into chorus. You choke on your breath, whip around the narrow cut between houses, shoulder-banging siding. Yards blur past, fences hiss splinters against your legs. Behind you the chant rolls, slower but constant. I am the harbinger. We are the harbinger. The plural flares for just a second. You hear it. You know you do. That's how fast it's growing. And as you push toward the hills, lungs tearing, you realize there's no barricade needed, no soldiers, no drones overhead. Your neighbors, your friends, are the net. The quarantine has already reached inside, and you are the mouse being driven through narrow alleys of dark, until you reach the cage they've already built. At first you think the glow on the ridges is just sunset clinging far past its time. A trick of smoke warped into horizon fire, but then you see the spark, metallic, deliberate, dropping from the night sky. It flashes once on impact, and the tree line ignites like paper set to a match. Your mouth goes dry. This is no accident. The drones are fire bombing the mountain. You should be afraid of heat, of suffocating smoke, But what chokes you most is the sudden tactical clarity. They are closing the circle. Quarantine doesn't stop with bridges and signals. It stops with flame. You're penned in exactly like diseased cattle, once penned outside Chicago. When public health ordinances decreed barns torched and herds slaughtered, just so contagion never threaded beyond invisible fences. History called it livestock control. Tonight, it's town control. Orange spreads like veins. The wind feeds it downhill. Lashes of flame leaping tree to tree, pushing toward riverbend. By dawn, there won't be a riverbend, just cinders and denial. You stumble backward, heart bucking, but the hum above follows, and another spark drops further south. Another burst, a twin flame eating another hillside. You realize you're watching pattern. Controlled demolition of wilderness as choke collar around your people. Jerry's words echo. You remember his soft, rabid mumble just before he swung the bat. They don't want us to leave. Now you understand. It isn't threat, it's strategy. Fire isn't forcing people back into their homes. It's shepherding them into extinction pens. As brush crackles and roars uphill, memories unspool. When you were small, your grandfather warned never to stray in Ogden's mine stories. He said in Appalachia, whole homesteads had burned suspiciously during Prohibition raids. Old-timers carried gossip that lawmen set fire as both punishment and cover. Years later, historians confirmed it, federal contractors calling it scorched earth policing. You swallowed those tailies as antique cruelties. Tonight proves the past isn't finished, it's alive. It remembered your town. And maybe something older than governments, older than contracts, is remembering too. Because when the flames catch their stride, you hear it riding in smoke. The same murmured line you've heard all damn night. I am the harbinger. But now it isn't neighbors saying it. It isn't drones. It's the ridge itself, crackling with the voice of fire. The smoke shifts strange. Faces in it bend too far, grins made out of embers. You blink till your eyes tear, but the images sharpen instead of dulling. You taste copper, you taste ash, you taste inevitability. You break into a run, stumbling through backyards toward the blacktop leading to the mine. The forest is collapsing into furnace behind you. No one will come out of their houses. The curfew and the grins have welded their doors shut. They're waiting, chanting from behind blinds, faces painted orange by approaching flames. Each drone circles like carrion birds, flame dropping as metronome, as ritual. And the horror squats in your ribs, heavier than gravity. This isn't extermination alone. This is concealment, whatever woke down there, whatever they stirred under Ogden's shaft. They think they can cauterize the evidence with a town. You stagger, lungs rasping smoke, head tilted back at glimmering drones, vomiting sparks. The folklore itch digs claws again. Indigenous tailies spoke of forest fires called down by spirits when something unclean crawled from stone. Fires not meant to cleanse, but to contain. Children were warned. Don't follow sparks in the night sky. They aren't stars, they're chains. Looking now at Riverbend, drowning in steel drones, you know it wasn't superstition. It was explanation, and you run harder, because the fire says the same thing as the smiling faces, the same thing as the knife man, the deputy, the sheriff's final gasps. The same thing every single corpse and machine mouth has droned since night fell. It's awake, and fire is only the first wall. The mine should have been comfort. Familiar rock, even if twisted and cracked, even if rotten timber held the ceiling like old bones. You grew up with the stories, your grandfather seated at the kitchen table, sipping bean, shaking his head with that distant look. The darkness will whisper to you down there. The words used to make you laugh, until you crouch now in that damp, narrow cut of stone and hear it for yourself. It isn't echo, not trickle of water, not vented air. The whisper comes from inside the black, as though it isn't emptiness at all, but something with lungs. A steady breath like exhale that brushes the back of your ear, even while you're alone. You tell yourself hallucination, lack of oxygen, claustrophobia. Your flashlight trembles anyway. The beam pushes only a few feet before thick black swallows it. That's new. In other minds, light falls further than this. Here, darkness isn't absence, it's substance. You drag your fingers against cold steel rails, praying the touchstone keeps you moored. And then a word. Not clear, not English, but cadence, a syllable bent wrong. Your body goes rigid. It's what your grandfather described after too many glasses. It talks in its sleep, boy. Like a dream slipping out of someone else's head, another whisper coils in, softer this time, like it knows you're listening. Harping, you almost drop your light. Because the others, the smiling ones, the knife man, Alvarez, your neighbors, they set it awake, sharp and loud. This is slower, older, like they were imitating what already mumbled below. You run your tongue across dry gums. You don't want to believe, but there it is. Their phrase was never invention. It was translation. Memories scratch up history again, unwelcome. 1665, the Great Plague of London. A pamphlet claimed miners trapped by collapse reported a voice whispering between sleep and death. Historians call it hysteria. Yet some miners later swore they heard nightly echoes long after leaving, like a word tethered to their bones. You swallow hard, because if that was real, then all those centuries of local hysteria might simply be reports from the same mouth, sleeping under different soils. The tunnel moans. Dust dribbles from overhead. You think of your grandfather's rules. Bear right. Follow the breeze. Don't listen. But the dark insists. The voices rise, layered. You are crawling blind, palm against stone, and you hear them overlapping coworkers, neighbors, strangers, and beneath them, a deeper timbre. Its words are too slow to be human, vowels dragging like tectonic plates. Your skull buzzes each time one brushes past. Your breath comes ragged. You whisper back before you even think. No. It bursts out small, pitiful, but the whispering answers with silence, intense silence, like it was waiting, like it heard you. Folklore claws up again. It always does. Welsh miners once swore of the knockers, spirits who tapped warnings before cave-ins, but darker logs said if you answered, they'd keep you. Recognition was contract. That panic bites deep now. You've already answered. The tunnel splits. You pause. One track side left, narrow and choking. Another veer right, your grandfather's direction. The whisper rides breeze like riding a current. Your cheek tingles, kissed by faint moving air. Relief surges an exit, direction. But with it comes something tangled. The wind carries voice, a hiss sharper now, weaving through rock, almost a laugh. Your flashlight sputters. No, the batteries are fine, you checked. Here, though, the light is thinning of its own accord, as though darkness feeds on it. You start moving faster, boots skidding dirt, shoulder bruising beams. You hear breathing again, not just your own. Behind you, ahead of you. No way to parse. It cradles you entirely. And then the worst thought arrives, uninvited. What if the exit tunnel your grandfather promised isn't path to light at all? What if he stepped out onto that bluff near Bixby because it allowed him? And what if those nights he whispered warnings over whiskey weren't memories at all, but residue, hand-me-downs from the voice that caught his ear in the deep? The darkness chuckles wet, slow, not sound, but vibration. Your bones ring with it. You keep crawling toward the puff of air, repeating under your breath, "Don't listen, don't listen." But every step carries more of their voices, layered above, below, through. You swear you hear your sheriff among them. Even Jerry. Even your own voice, slurred, delayed, repeating, "I am the harbinger." Your flashlight swells once and bursts. Gone. Absolute pitch black, and the whisper, unopposed now, exhales directly into your skull. And you have to wonder if this was escape at all, or invitation finally accepted. The mind does not want you. Or maybe it wants you exactly enough to keep you. Stone above you has groaned for hours, every step punctuated by gritty trickles, and the snap of timber shoring, collapsing under pressure. But now the sound is deeper, fuller, too much like ribs cracking in a boneyard. When the tunnel buckles, you don't even scream. You just fold your body to the floor as a tidal wave of dust and rock closes the way behind. The air becomes clotting, a thickness you can taste, copper and fungus. Each breath is a gift torn out of someone else's lungs. And there, pinned in the rock-muffled dark, you finally admit the thing your grandfather had half slurred through whiskey sighs. These tunnels breathe back. The air moves with intention. The draft you trusted as guide becomes erratic, as if tugging you elsewhere, like invisible fingers brushing your cheek, nudging you not up, but down. And the voices multiply. At first, you still beg reason to hold. Maybe it's your head injury, maybe hypoxia, maybe panic. But then the voices begin calling you by name, whispering syllables you never offered them, dragged, distorted renditions of your own badge number, your dead sheriff's laugh, remixed into insect buzz chuckle. Alvarez's whisper guttered through dirt, saying lines he never had time to learn. You don't leave, you carry it out. The worst comes when one of them is you. Not yesterday's you, not a memory. A voice that says exactly what you're thinking, half a beat late, like an echo only a different throat could make. You test it. Murmur, help me. And from stone behind, same words, same tempo, except the last syllable laughs. You push forward on hands and knees, choking in dust. Rail guides vanish. Your palm finds only dirt where cold metal once anchored you. The collapse sheared track clean. You are compassless. Claustrophobia squeezes. The air feels used up. You start swallowing nothing. Panic's iron hand clutches your ribs, that dumb mammal certainty. You are about to die. And then something new. Not whisper, not voice. A grind under your knees. The floor pulses faint. At first you chalk it up to aftershock, a simple rock shift. But the rhythm gains pattern. Slow, deliberate. A heartbeat large enough to crush mountains. That's when the folklore itch claws inside your head. Welsh earthwomb myths. Tailies miners swapped drunk, saying sometimes the mine isn't a hole at all but a body, and we are squirming parasites in its gut. And now, bleeding in dust, suckling at scraps of oxygen, you are convinced the tunnel isn't collapsing. The tunnel is swallowing. Blackness buckles against your chest, heavier than stone. You bite down panic and think of your grandfather. Don't listen to it whisper. But you already have, because it's whispering still, closer now, not in your ear, not in the air, directly in your thoughts, weaving through like mold in bread. It doesn't even try to disguise itself. You are mine, and you believe it. You claw forward anyway. Fingers bleed raw as you scrape at walls, nails peeling. You try to tell yourself air is moving stronger, rising tongue of breeze. That there is still an exit, some bluff waiting at the end, but every foot forward simply rattles more laughter loose from rock. And then silence, pure void. No collapse, no voices, dead air, which is somehow worse, because you know silence means it's listening to you now, waiting for the next thought so it can repeat, pinned in Earth's throat, lungs failing. You understand collapse wasn't accident, wasn't hazard. It was the mind making sure you don't get away. Every death before, every grin, every chant, they were rehearsal. And this crushing hush around you is the main act. You try not to think anything at all, not even your name. Because down here, every name said once is said forever, and still, faint through choking lungs, a voice you hoped you'd never hear again curls out of the stone. Your own. I am the harbinger, and it isn't echo this time. It's prophecy. The breeze on your cheek is alive. Cool, thin, but alive. You cling to it like salvation, crawling forward with raw palms, ribs compressing with each shallow breath. The mine is still whispering your name, your badge number, promises in borrowed voices that are definitely not human anymore. But the air is stronger now, a draft tugging your hair, drawing you east, drawing you out. You crawl until your knees scream, until blood scabs into dust. Every dozen feet you stop, terrified, waiting to hear if the collapse chased you forward. But the dark behind only mutters and chuckles, too thick to follow. Maybe because it doesn't need to. Maybe because it already knows you're carrying it out. Then, at last, the black slackens. Ahead becomes less dark, not light yet, not salvation, but dilution, the black thinning into gray. Your pulse riots. You force yourself not to rush. You remember your grandfather's last warning. Don't run. Don't listen. Just keep your cheek to the air. Each crawl forward, gray brightens. Soon the tunnel mouth is cut in silhouette. No tricks, not hallucination, real stars. You press forward, half sobbing. When you finally spill onto the rocky hillside, the dawn hits you like floodlights. Sunrise. Faint, pale blue light on the horizon. Bixby twinkling below. Grassy bluff under your knees. Daylight. You made it. The air here tastes clean, sharp. No dust, no whispers. Birds are waking. Your body shakes. But tears sting salt down your face. It's over. Whatever nightmare Riverbend has become, you've outlived it. And then you hear yourself speak. Not by choice. I am the harbinger. The words leak with the same cadence that every other mouth bore. Your lips form them before your brain argues. Your tongue shapes syllables not your own. You clasp your mouth with trembling hands, horrified, but deep down, you know, you listened too long. The dark etched its script in you. The worst thought arrives uninvited, as always. Your grandfather escaped once, too. He told everyone the story in slurred gulps, but maybe he hadn't merely gotten lost. Maybe he hadn't been spinning yarn. Maybe he'd come out just like you, relieved, certain he'd triumphed. And then, later, when the whiskey numbed his guard, the words slipped out. The darkness whispers. You stagger into the pale morning, towards the town below. Ash already drifting faint from the direction of Riverbend. The world should feel fresh, clear. But every breath you take, you can feel it whispering alongside, breathing with you, waiting to introduce itself through you. The people in Bixby don't know. They'll listen. They'll believe. And you, broken, trembling, desperate for someone to understand, you will tell them. Because you have to. Because it has to be told. Because you are the survivor. Because you are the harbinger. Downhill should be easy. Gravity should pull you. But with every step, the air grows harder to trust. The morning smells green, damp, with dew, fresh, the way dawn always cleans the world. But beneath it rides another scent that has no business here. Scorched iron, ozone, sweet rot. You know it too well now. The mind's breath. When you pause to rest, staring out at the sleepy roofs of Bixby, you feel it pulse under your tongue. Words want out. They're waiting at the seam of your teeth. I am the harbinger. Every time you swallow them back down, pressure builds behind your eyes. You tell yourself, just warn them. Tell them about the drones, the fire, the bridges sealed, the knives in familiar hands. Tell them what happened in Riverbend. If they know, They'll believe you, they'll fight, they'll resist. But what if telling is exactly what the thing wants? Your grandfather had survived this walk once too. He told the tale as amusement, slurred through liquor. Nobody listened, nobody believed. But the very act of telling it planted something, didn't it? That's why his words echoed back with such precision when the whispers started. Story is infection. Story is transmission. You stand on that hillside as the sun edges higher over the tree line. Bixby churns awake smokestacks from breakfast stoves, car doors slamming, dogs barking. The first people are stirring out onto porches. Ordinary life, still safe, still assuming the world is whole. And your throat burns. You know the truth better than they do. They need your warning. They need your story. You can't hold it in. So you start down the slope. Every breath you take, you speak under it, barely audible. Lips cracked wide in a grin you don't remember learning. I am the harbinger. And soon they will be too.